Welcome, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Hawaii Retirement Show. Super excited to be here talking about a great topic, FERS computation. Before we jump in, Jason, how you doing? How was your week?
Yeah, doing good. It's that time of year, right? Turkey time.
Yep,
Yeah.
we're recording this a couple weeks before November starts, but yeah, Thanksgiving just happened. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving weekend. Hopefully, your football teams are still performing as well as you hope they would be. Yeah, super excited to jump into this conversation. So, Jason, first computation. Um, there's math, there's complication involved, but we're gonna try to break it down for our listeners today and what things that they can do and what's to know. So why don't you kick us off? Um, what is the first thing that most people need to think about when it comes to computation?
Yeah, and this is I don't want to make this more complicated than it is because it is a pretty simple topic, and most of the federal workers out there probably already know how to computate their FERS benefit, the annuity, right? But I think to start off, the first thing to understand is a key part of the computation is your high three. And
Yep.
what your high three is, it's your highest 3 years, consecutive years salary, right? So whatever that is, that might happen in the middle of your career. Typically, we always see it happening at the end of your career, but it's the 3 consecutive years of your highest salary. So that's a big part of the computation to understand. Um, just a note on that, it doesn't include bonuses or overtime. I know when I was a federal worker, I worked a lot of overtime, and unfortunately, that all that effort does not count for the computation in the high three. But what does count is if you work like shift work. So I know like if you go on a overnight shift or a second shift, if there's any differential that's paid to you, that does uh, count towards your salary for that year, if that year is part of your 3 consecutive highest years.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, and so for most people, if you're on a career path, or you're trying to think about what that looks like. That high three is consecutive, and a big part of what we can control is whether we're getting raises or whether we're looking for different jobs, opportunities, and things like that. So awesome. Um, Now, in that formula, right, there's going to be the high three, and then so moving on to just like um, just the formula, the basic formula that goes in that. You want to explain a little bit of that, um,
Right.
and before we go into the actual examples, maybe.
Sure. So the three parts are going to be your high three, your high three, and then your years of service, and then it's your multiplier. And those are the three parts. So years of service, that's really straightforward. Um, Sick leave for federal workers can be counted towards years of service, and it's not for years of service isn't counted in just years; it's counted in months, right? So you can have 24 years and 6 months, right, in your computation. It's not just years. Um, and like we just talked about the high three, so the last part is the multiplier, and there's two multipliers. There's the 1% or 1.1%. So those are the only two. uh the 1%, the lower of the two, applies to people who are under age 62, which is the full retirement age for the FERS benefit. Or you're at age 62, but you have less than 20 years of service. So you reach that full retirement age of 62, but you just under 20 years. So those are the two reasons in which you would use the 1% multiplier. Um, and I'll just go right into an example here. I kind of I kind of laid out before we started recording here. So let's take a federal worker who had 30 years of service, and let's say they took their benefit before they reach age 62, right? So they're going to be using the 1% multiplier. And let's say their high three was $85,000 a year when you averaged out their high 3 consecutive years. Using the 1% multiplier, we get $25,500. So that's their annual benefit. This isn't going to be paid to you annually, right? It'll be paid to you bi-monthly. But that's their benefit. So $25,500. So we're going to use those same numbers as we look at our next example with somebody who uses the 1.1%. So the 1.1%, the higher of the two multipliers, is going to apply to anybody who's reaches that full retirement age 62 or older, and they have those 20 years of service minimum. Okay, so with that, let's look at somebody with the same situation, 30 years of service, $85,000 a year, high three, and now they reach the 20 years and age 62, so that you can use the 1.1% multiplier, and the benefit comes out to $28,050. So you can see it's a $2,550 difference for the same years of service, the same high three. The only difference is they met the age 62 with 20 years of service, so an extra $2,550 a year. You following me there, Paul? Anything I need
Yeah.
to clean up?
No, I think, that's great. I mean, it shows you like, age matters, right? The age that you start. And, even though you might have 30 years, if you started early, there could be not necessarily a penalty, but a reduction of some sort,
Right.
because of that computation of the difference between 1 and 1.1. I think that's awesome. Um, uh, just curious, do you want to go over any of the special provisions of others, talking about that difference in the computation, or do you want to go to just age reduction?
I think it's just worth mentioning. So
Okay.
we won't do an example, but I think it covers air traffic controllers, firefighters, law enforcement officers, Capitol Police, Supreme Court Police, and nuclear materials couriers. And there are some nuclear material couriers here in Hawaii. The way your benefit is calculated is 1.7% is your multiplier for your years of service not to exceed 20 years. And then after that, it's 1% as your multiplier for all the years that exceed 20 years. So you still have your high three, you still have minimum retirement age, you still have years of service. It's just they're giving you, because of the position you hold, which is dangerous, stressful, and whatnot, they're giving you a much higher multiplier, 1.7%, but only up for that first 20 years. If you work 25 years, that last 5 years of service gets calculated with the 1% multiplier.
Right.
Still using your high three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important just to remember, this is a federal computation, so you're a federal firefighter,
Right.
you're
Right.
federal law enforcement and police, right? So that's the difference, and that's awesome, a benefit to have 1.7, and it kind of makes sense because those all sound pretty hazardous, right? So they're giving a little bit of a computation there. Yeah. So that's awesome. So that happens to be you, and just know that your benefit does have that difference. With the caveat that 20 years of service is kind of like that cap. Sounds
Right.
correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's go into age reduction. So so with these computations, your years of service matter, your high three compensation matter, and the percentage that you get is how we get to that total number of annual benefit. But there are things that are there, like how old you are when you start these benefits, kind of like Social Security, right? So if you take it early or at your minimum retirement age, there could be potentially some reductions. So Jason, do you want to just high level go over those reductions, and then we kind of maybe give an example at the end?
Right. So I think the big takeaway is if you retire at your minimum retirement age, which is 57 typically, you just got to understand that there's a 5% per year reduction in your benefit for every year you're under age 62. The way you can get around this, if you don't want to take that 5% a year reduction, is you can defer your benefit, right? So if I did my 20 years of service and I want to retire at 57, I can do that and defer my my annuity, my pension benefit until age 62, and that way I can eliminate the reduction. I can use the higher of the two multipliers by deferring my my benefit. And I think that's where we'll leave it. I mean, the computation kind of lays it out there, and you just got to understand, if you are going to do the early retirement age, there's going to be a slight reduction in your benefit there.
Yep, absolutely. So just knowing, like, what's the minimum requirement, and if you don't need the money yet and you can defer, or if you're, obviously if you're still working, but knowing that started early, there's a reduction. Know that we have control of, the years of service. Maybe, just the high 3 compensation, we can have some control over that. Yeah, let's take advantage of this amazing benefit that we have access to. But no, most of the time it's actually not enough for your retirement. So as we talked about in other episodes, TSPs and Roth IRAs and other ways are how you kind of meet that
Social Security.
Yep. So just I want to highlight really quickly survivor benefits, just because we'll probably have a separate episode about this, but you want to just highlight it really quickly?
Yeah, and it's just most people are familiar with it, whether you're in the state or the federal system. You can elect a certain percentage of survivor benefits, typically for your spouse. If you pass away, they can carry on your pension, and the more you leave in the survivor benefit, the more your pension while you're alive will be reduced. So I think that's high level, just something to consider. And I think it's important considering early as you map out your needs and your budget in retirement, not just doing the calculation with the high 3, the computation years of service, but what is that benefit after I elect whatever I am going to elect for my survivor benefit and spouse, if you are going to elect that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, with that, that's the computation of the federal employee retirement system. Pretty basic, pretty straightforward for the most part. So hopefully you guys understand, like, these are the equations that help design and build your guys' benefits. If you have questions or you want us to kind of dive deeper, again, we're always open to answering questions. So with that, Jason, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next time.
The opinions and statements presented on this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations. Never make any investment or financial decisions based on information offered on this show without first consulting their financial, legal, or tax advisor. All economic and performance information mentioned on the show is historical in nature and is not indicative of any future results. All indices mentioned on this show are unmanaged and cannot be invested in directly. All information is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. Lastly, all opinions expressed by Jason Cutitta, Paul McWilliams, and any guests on the show are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of or are endorsed by ToBA Financial or Inspire Advisors. For Jason Cutitta, investment advisory services are offered through ToBA Financial LLC, a registered investment advisor offering advisory services in the state of Hawaii and in other jurisdictions where exempt from registration. And for Paul McWilliams, investment advisory services are offered through Inspire Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor with the SEC.